Welcome, everyone, back to another episode of Watch and Listen. Should we do a dog check? I have a dog on my lap. You guys, where's Bennett?
I don't know where. He's here.
He's there. Okay, good.
Yeah, he's passed out over here on the floor.
You know,
And
a recording
Maisie's
of Watch...
on it.
Go ahead, Mike.
Maisie's on a different floor of the house at the moment, so
Gotcha.
I can't come up with her.
Would you like us to wait, and then you can go get Maisie? I'm kidding.
No,
I'm
she's
kidding.
never been in the basement. I don't think it would work.
That's fine. That's fine. We're just going to carry on. I'm just we're doing a dog check because, like, you know, obviously number one, I have Frank. He's my producer here on my lap, and then obviously Bennett. Like, it's just not the same without Bennett. You know, it's just not. Like the
well, if you want to hear Bennett, I can give him a quick call to action.
Let's do it. Might as well.
Action.
Oh man, that is some seriously German. Oh, all right.
Wow.
There he is.
All
now
right.
he's up.
Man, Bennett is the absolute. He's the business. That guy. So
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that he's a pretty intimidating dog. Because apparently,
He can be. Yeah.
like apparently a few people that were coming out from Crown and Caliber were a little bit kind of scared. Is that the right thing to say when they came out to your shop and Bennett was there?
I have heard that he haunts some crew members' nightmares.
That is pretty funny.
So,
That's pretty funny. All right.
He's on their minds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a German Shepherd, and he's trained to be a guard dog. So anyway, without further ado, let's not make this episode all about dogs. Let's make this episode about Mike. Now, Mike, you are a familiar face if you folks have watched the Basel World episode, which was the bonus episode that we released just last week. And if you haven't watched it, you should go check it out because we go really in depth with what Basel World is, and what it's going to be. Really, really good episode. Now, you did introduce yourself in that episode, but obviously this is a new episode, so go ahead and introduce yourself again.
Sure. I'm Michael Margolis. I've been kind of in the watch world full time for about 15 years, kind of on the periphery for a lot longer. And I am an agent in the United States, Canada, Caribbean, Mexico, Latin America for H. Moser, Haute Lance, Chapek, and Singer Reimagined watches. So 4 small independent watch brands.
All right. Okay. We're going to talk about those watch brands, but before we talk about those watch brands and what you do with Horology Works, which is your company, let's talk about you. You said 15 years in the business, but obviously 15 years is you in the industry not really being a watch guy, right? I mean, you were a watch guy well before that. You were a moderator of a major website. So, like, tell us a little bit about how you got started in this crazy hobby of ours.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've been a watch nut since high school, which for me was a long time ago. When I was in high school, I had a digital watch and it died. And I came home one day and I said to my dad, "Oh, my watch died." And he said to me, "Oh, I have a watch." Now, my dad was a printer, so he was a tradesman. I never saw him wear it, but he went up to his jewelry box and he came downstairs and he brought me an Omega Seamaster.
Nice.
And I wound that thing up wound it up, put it to my ear, heard that little machine ticking, and I fell in love. I was probably 15 or 16 years old, and I've been a watch nut ever since. In the mid 1990s, I found what was then WatchNet that turned into Time Zone. Started hanging out there with some of the really early guys, William Messina and Peter Chong, and became a moderator there for the Blancpain forum, then the IWC forum. I had Vacheron for a while. I was a super moderator, so I had moderator privileges on all the forums. And then, I'll back up a little bit. In about 1998 or so, I met Jean Claude Biver, who at the time was the CEO of Blancpain still. He hadn't left the Swatch Group yet.
Mm-hmm.
And we just became friends. One day he called me up and he said, "Hey, can you help me? I want to do a collector's dinner in New York City." So I brought together a pile of watch nuts in New York City for him. This was like, I mean, you have to remember, this is 20, I don't know how many years ago, more than 20 years ago. And the brands weren't selling direct at the time. So they knew their retailers, but they didn't know their customers. And they didn't know the guy who actually bought the watch. Maybe they met a couple because they'd come for a factory tour. So we did this dinner in New York City. There was maybe 20 or 30 of us there. And at the end of the night, Jean Claude said to me, you know, this has been the best night of my life. And I was like, oh, I mean, it was a nice dinner and good wine and everything, but, you know, best night of my life. And he said, no, you don't understand. I never get to meet with the people who actually buy my watch. We're so busy with our distributors and our dealers, and we never get to meet the end users. So, I mean, that was kind of how it started. He and I became friends from there, and we'd get together once or twice a year and have dinner when he was in New York City or whatever. And then in 2004, he called me and he said, Mike, I have great news. And I said, yeah, I heard you left the Swatch Group. I heard something about Frank Mueller. And he's like, no. I left the Swatch Group and I'm going to work for Hublot. and I said to him, Jean-Claude, I own an Hublot. I mean, Hublot's dead. What do you mean you're going to work for Hublot? What a disaster. And he said to me, no, it's going to be great. I want you to come to New York City, meet me for breakfast, and I'll explain it all to you. So I drove to New York City. I met him for breakfast, and he, like the very classic, he drew out on a paper napkin for me a picture of the Big Bang with the gold under the ground and the rubber above the ground and the Big Bang and the fusion and all that.
Yeah.
And I said to him, that's awesome. I'll buy that watch.
Wait, so
and he said,
JCB actually designed the Big Bang? He was the designer? There wasn't a designer that was hired for the Big Bang?
There was a watch designer, but ultimately, when you're Jean Claude Biver, you do everything, right? You know. So he said to me, well, that's great. I'm glad you want to buy the watch, but what I want is for you to start an Hublot forum on Time Zone.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, I'm not sure I can do that. I mean, there's no discussion about Hublot on Time Zone. And he said, you don't understand. I'm going to come to Time Zone and I'm going to post and I'm going to answer people's questions and I'll be available to them.
Wow.
And you have to understand, in 1998, in 2004, that was unheard of, right? You had this giant wall between the brand and the customer, and neither one of them could jump to the other side of that wall.
Right.
You had the retailer in the middle that could kind of go both sides. But so I told the owners of Time Zone, and they were like, yeah, that's perfect. We'd love to do that. Yeah, we started a Time Zone, an Hublot forum, and Jean-Claude would come in and answer questions to people. And then when they started delivering watches, he would offer a personal handwritten guarantee. I was an employee. I was just helping him because he was my friend.
Right.
And we did that through the launch of the Big Bang, which was just astronomical. There was so much demand and so little supply. And then in 2007, we were doing a pre-Basel at the Mercy Park Hotel in New York City. And it was just him and I alone. We were setting stuff up. Even the salespeople weren't there yet. And he said to me, how's your job? And I said, I mean, my job's okay. I was in high-tech sales for about 15 years. And I said, you know, in high-tech sales, every year the price of your product goes down. And every year your quota goes up. So, you know, you're beating your head against the wall trying to stay even. And he said, why don't you come work for Hublot?
Okay. And
I said, well, what would you like me to do? And he said, well, design a job. Tell me what you want to do and how much money you need, and we'll figure this out. So he had a president and a sales guy, and I liked both of those guys. They were good guys. So we designed a job where I was the communication and promotion manager. I was chasing the gray market. The Big Bang was so hot at the time that when there was a watch on the gray market, they wanted to know who sold it. So I was, you know, out. He actually wired me like $100,000, and I was out buying Hublots and then we traced the serial number back to the retailer.
You
We're
gotta be
like,
kidding me.
could you explain how this watch got into 47th Street? How did this watch get to the Sable building? So I did that for about a year, and in the beginning of 2008, he hired me to run Hublot of America. So I did that for 2008, 9, 10, 11. And then in the beginning of 2012, actually at the SIHH, I was offered the position of president of North America of Girard-Perregaux and Jean Richard. And that was, at Hublot, I was mostly in charge of sales.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of doing everything because there wasn't a president for most of that time. So I took the GP job knowing that there had been 4 presidents in 5 years before me.
Wow.
And I kind of knew it was walking onto thin ice. But the CEO was a good friend of mine. And I said to him, I'm going to need 3 to 5 years to turn this around. And he said, yes, you have it.
Wow. Okay.
Then he got fired and I got fired. And but you know what? GP was a great experience. I still love the product. I still own one. It's an amazing watch. I learned a lot there. I learned so much there about everything from human resources and legal. We reset up a whole watchmaking atelier when I was there. They had been subbing all of the repairs out to another company. So we brought watchmaker in from Switzerland and, bought benches and compressors and tools and all that. It was, I learned a lot at GP. And while I wish that it could have lasted longer than it did, it was an amazing experience. And I couldn't do what I do today.
Yeah.
If I didn't have those couple of years under my belt.
Yeah.
And we had good success. I wasn't done, but they were done.
Well,
so
yeah, such is life, right? That's kind of what happens. But 2 things I wanted to kind of like throw in there. So it's funny because we were talking about Hublot and your experiences with Hublot, and basically like during the times that you were there, that was like the height of the big watch market. So I'm sure like working for Hublot was nuts. And obviously, it sounds like you were having a lot of fun interrogating people, finding out like where these watches were coming from. But one of the things that like we've had a couple of conversations before, and we actually did a podcast on a previous show that I did where we did something similar, and we talked about Hublot. And I remember being like the biggest Hublot hater. I was the guy that's like, if anybody mentioned Hublot, I was like, no, I spit on this. This is disgusting. And it's funny because like after the conversation, I was completely different. Because you described to me where Hublot really shines. And I started understanding that not everything is just about the movement. And the movements actually became really great with Hublot as well. So one of the things that I do want to kind of point out with actually both Hublot and Girard-Perregaux, 2 really, like obviously Hublot wasn't an under-the-radar brand because it was selling much better than GP at that time, and it was a very hot product. And unfortunately, I don't think there was a period in GP's life where they had something where it was like, whoa, this is a really hot product and we're selling a bunch of these. I think they kind of hoped that maybe like the Ferrari partnership would do something like that, but didn't really pan out that way. But anyway.
Yeah, I think Ferrari was about the only time that there was more demand than there was supply.
Okay.
Let's say it that way.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Let's say it that way.
Yeah. So like with Hublot and Girard, we'll talk about Hublot first. If you really take a look at the materials and what they're doing with the materials, it's really, really impressive. So if you're not just, let's say, a movement snob and all you want is an in-house movement with every watch that you have, you should definitely consider taking a look at Hublot. Yes, a lot of people say that it looks too similar, like, an Audemars product or something of that sort. But really, if you take a look at it, the majority of these watches, like even GP's Laureato, right? It looks pretty close to some of the other watches in that same kind of tier, like the Royal Oak. So if watches look super, super similar and you think that everybody's plagiarizing off each other, you probably aren't wrong because designers are designers. And if you take a look at like the automotive world, you kind of have a manufacturer that makes a design, right? And then everybody kind of follows in the design language thereafter. It's not very much different in the watch world. So if you think that, the AP came out and everybody copied them, yeah, probably to an extent, but that's also not a bad thing. So number 2 with GP, if you guys are looking for a watch that is a lot, and we're talking about a lot of bang for the buck, like seriously good bang for the buck, you should consider GP. Anyway, rant over, continue.
So I'll agree with you on Hublot. I mean, look, I worked there for a long time. I fed my kids and paid my mortgage selling Hublots. It may not be high horology. They may not pretend to be. A lot of their watches use 7750s.
Sure.
Which is a super reliable, nothing wrong with that movement.
It's a great movement.
You know, do they have screws in the bezel? Yes, they do. Does Audemars? Yes. But you know what? Hublot had screws in the bezel in 1980.
Right.
And, you know, like you said, when you look at a watch, there's only so much you can do to it, so much design that's unique. And then, you know, you hope and try for a completely new design, but that's really hard to do a lot of times.
Sure.
I talk about what I call iconic watch, a watch that from across the room, I look at Cameron's wrist and I know what it is.
Sure.
Right. And I got 10 fingers. There's not many really iconic watches. We can talk about a Rolex Sport model. We can talk about Jaeger Reverso. We can talk about a Royal Oak. We could talk about a Longa 1.
Sure.
That's only 4 or 5 fingers, and I'm starting to struggle. So, sure, there are really super iconic watches that everybody knows what that is. Richard Mille is another one.
Sure, Panerai, the radio mirrors, the Lunar cases.
But there's not that many.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
And most brands would die to have an iconic watch that everybody knows what it is from across the room. And the truth is, 95% of brands just don't have that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I loved my time at Hublot. I learned a lot. Jean Claude he was my direct boss. He's an amazing man. He's not an easy man to work for, but if you meet somebody who worked for him for a number of years, you know that guy works hard and he knows what he's doing. Yeah. I guess that's the way I'll say it.
Okay, fair. Cameron, what do you think about GPs? Have you ever worked on them? Have you ever played with them?
I never worked for GP. I have serviced some, and I think, like you said, there's a lot of bang for your buck, especially in the secondhand market.
Right.
They are a company that has access to amazing watchmakers, amazing movements, a wealth of know-how, some very old designs, a lot of history.
Yeah.
So they have all of these things that make companies like Vacheron and AP and Patek great watch houses, but they don't seem to have their marketing down and their sales down to the point that it bolsters all of that.
Right.
So you can get a very good deal on something that flies under the radar, but has amazing quality and amazing watchmaking and amazing history behind it.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. See, they should have kept you on the job there for a couple more years, and you could have turned things around, right, Mike?
Well, we did a good job for the time that that I was there. I assembled a nice team. It was really going well, and then corporate decided they wanted to make some changes. My CEO lost his job, and I think kind of all of his team as well. So
crazy. And
I also relaunched Jean Richard, which they had done a couple of times, but we had made some really cool stuff for Jean Richard in the, let's say, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 range. And it was going well. And then, corporate pulled the plug. Oh, well, it's okay.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah, I remember.
Jean Richard is another brand that is amazing value. Secondhand as well.
Oh yeah.
Those watches for around like $1,000 to $2,000, you can get a really nice watch.
Yeah.
Solid build quality.
Really nice dials.
I think it's a great entry point into the mechanical watch world.
Right.
Yep. Nice watch.
Yeah.
Nice watch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of the world of business, right? In the world of watches, sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail, and just life goes on.
I mean, the collectors, I would say, they kind of understand that ultimately it is a business, and and the companies are there to make a profit. But, you know, when you're a collector and all you're focusing on is, oh, how come they didn't put a swan neck regulator on this watch? Well, you know, because I'm just making that up. But, well, because it costs $500 to do that. And, you know, we can't increase the price of the watch enough to make it worthwhile. So
right.
there's always pluses and minuses in everything that happens in any business, and watches are just the same.
Yeah, you have a pretty ridiculous collection, and in that collection is a GP, a really cool GP. You don't happen to have it with you, do you? He's reaching for something.
I'm reaching for it. I do. It's right here.
All right. Let's see it.
Let's see.
Very nice.
If I can.
You know what? You can't really see it on. Yeah, we can't really see it on the shot here. But what we'll do is you'll just send us pictures, and we'll post it on our socials. Or you know, actually, I'll just superimpose it when we do post here. So problem solved.
That might be a little better.
Tell us about this watch.
So this is a perpetual calendar, and then it has two little arrows at the very top at 11 and 1. One is an equation of time, and one is a month length indicator. So the equation of time is a really weird complication that even watch salespeople can't really explain to you what it does.
Yeah, I can't. I have no idea.
But I can. So
okay.
Understand that the Earth wobbles on its axis. So the sun is not at the highest point in the sky at noon every day. So there are times of the year when it might be 15 minutes early, and there are times of the year when it might be 15 minutes late.
Okay.
So if you had a super accurate sundial that gave you the time to the minute, it would not agree with the regular time on the watch that's on your wrist, time as we know it. So the equation of time will tell you whether you need to add or subtract the time from time as we know it to solar or sidereal time. That's what equation of time is.
Got it.
And then the watch also has a month length indicator, so it's a little needle that points to 28, 29, 30, or 31 for how many days are in the month. That's another complication that there's no other watch that has it that I know of.
Right. Yeah. And also a complication that clearly a lot of us use very, very frequently.
Yeah, equation of time as well, because, you know, we all have a super accurate sundial.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But you know, but this is watchmaking excellence. It's not why do we do it, it's we can do it, sure. Right? I've got a few tourbillons on the table in front of me, and that's kind of the same thing. If a tourbillon is a testimony to the watchmaking house's skill. I won't say it's not necessary, because the truth is, in the chronometer competitions, every year a tourbillon wins. So it does add to timekeeping, but it was invented by Abraham Breguet because a watch sat in your vest pocket in the same position all day long,
right.
And it wasn't moving. So now when you're on a wrist and you're up and you're down and you're all around, technically you don't need a tourbillon, but it still serves a purpose, and it's an amazing thing to look at as well.
Right. Yeah, and those competitions are great.
All
we
make is tourbillons.
Those are
Once you put them on your wrist, it's a tourbillon. Exactly.
I see what you did there. I was going to be like, wait a minute. I need to take a second look.
Finish your own tourbillon by adding the wrist. Exactly.
Right. Well, you better be limber, because I think that after a little bit of time, you're going to get a little sore. But anyway, all right. So let's continue with what you did after GP, and I mean, is that like 2012? You said, right? That's about the time that you left GP.
I left Hublot in 2012, and
okay,
GP ended in the spring of 2014.
Okay.
And then I started a couple of little consulting gigs that was trying to sort of look for a job at the same time as, keep paying my bills and whatever. I started with a couple of small brands that, honestly, I probably shouldn't have started with. They weren't in my wheelhouse, let's say. But when you're young and hungry, you kind of take any job that'll come along until you can sort of settle into your groove. And in 2016, I started with H. Moser, which was for me one of my dream companies. If I had made a list of who I could have worked for, Moser would have been at the top of the list. I actually came really close to buying a Moser about 5 or 6 years previous, but ended up not for a couple of reasons. But anyway, I've always loved the brand. Amazing brand, beautiful products. At the time, they were a little sleepy. Let's say it that way. But that didn't last long. And so yeah, I started with Moser and Haute in 2016. 2015 in the United States, Moser sold 0 watches.
Wow.
So I literally started from nothing. They had 2 retailers, but they, I think one had done a stock balance, so he did a +2 and a -2, and there was no turnover the year before I started. And just having a warm body in the United States, out calling on retailers, doing the red bars and the collectors events, we had success right away. The first year, we sold a bunch of watches and started to open up the retail network a little bit. I think the United States is big enough that it can sustain more than 2 retailers.
Okay.
And, it's grown really well. They've had innovative products, innovative marketing. They've distinguished themselves from all the other brands in one way or another. And Moser's going great guns. So even in this difficult period of coronavirus, I sold 2 tourbillons last week. So, business it's not what it was, but business is fine. We're doing just fine.
Okay.
So yeah, it's good.
Well, that's good news. That's good news in the light of all this stuff. Let's take a minute to talk about Moser, because there are a lot of different brands out there, and yeah, you represent some pretty amazing ones. All of them are pretty damn great, to be honest with you. I mean, Chopik and Haute, and we'll talk about those in detail a little bit later. But let's talk about Moser and why Moser is special. And I think one of the reasons that Moser is special is because they kind of don't really do what everybody else does, and I'm talking about their dials. Not only the dials also, but the Perpetual Calendar. And Cameron, you can tell us about kind of, if you know much about it, like why that Perpetual Calendar is so cool in comparison to the others. We were talking about kind of fragility and indication and things like that, prior to us actually starting recording this episode. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that. So, Mike, give us a background of what really makes Moser that special.
So Moser's special for a few reasons. One is their technical innovations. I would say another reason is they are family-owned and entrepreneurial. I can't say that word. Like most of our customers are entrepreneurs, and so are the Meilland family. Technical expertise. Let's talk about the Perpetual Calendar. So the Perpetual Calendar, I tell my salespeople, is the only bulletproof Perpetual Calendar in the market. It's the only calendar you can, as a salesperson, that you can hand it to the customer across the counter and say, play with the watch.
Right.
And the guy can turn the calendar backwards or forwards, and he can set the date at midnight, and he can change the time back and forth across midnight, and he's not going to break the watch.
Right.
It's so technically interesting that as a 1-year-old company, Moser won the Geneva Grand Prix Innovation Prize. Their first year. It was unheard of that a brand new company would win a prize. But the calendar was just so revolutionary. At 1 minute, or directly at midnight on February 28th, the watch will jump immediately to March 1st. It doesn't go February 29th, February 30th, February 31st. The 31 goes to 1, February goes to March. It just jumps. And at 1 minute after midnight, you can turn the time backwards. You can turn the date backwards. So if you're on a plane and you're coming home, this is my favorite story. The first time I went to Hong Kong, I was wearing my Patek Philippe annual calendar. amazing watch. Was a gift from my wife, a very special watch. And so when you get on a plane in New York City and you fly to Hong Kong, your watch is 12 hours slow when you land, so it's really easy. You set it forward 12 hours, everything's great. But when you get on the plane in Hong Kong and you fly back to New York and you land in New York City and your watch is showing noon and it's actually midnight 12 hours before, and you're wearing a perpetual or an annual calendar, there's only one thing you can do with that watch if you don't want to break it.
Throw it in the trash and get a GMT.
Well, okay, there's two things. Okay, there's two things you can do then.
Right.
You have to take the watch off, you put it on your dresser, you let it sit for 2 or 3 days until it stops, and then you set it forward to the proper time.
Okay.
With the Moser, you can just turn the hands back 12 hours and you're done.
Right.
And if you cross midnight, it's not a big deal. So it's kind of an amazing watch, and it's simple. Again, most perpetual calendars will have day, date, month, leap year indicator, moon phase, all kinds of stuff all over the dial, like my GP that I just showed you. The Moser is just super clean. It has an hour, minute, second, a small month indicator that you don't even notice, because let's be honest, I know that it's April right now. I may not know that today is the 20th, but I know that it's April.
Right.
So, and as far as leap year goes, the only time you need the leap year indication on a watch is when you buy the watch, because you want to set it up so that it does the leap years properly.
Okay.
So Moser puts the leap year wheel on the back because you don't need it. You don't need it. I know it's a leap year. It's unnecessary to have that kind of stuff on the front of the watch.
It's nice to see it on the back, though, because it's a little secret thing just for you. It looks simple from the front, and when you turn it over, you're the only person that's getting that joy.
Yeah,
it's pretty nice.
I don't know if you'll be able to see this.
We'll post more. We'll post some detailed pictures. I'll post some stuff off the website, and some of your pictures as well.
Yeah, but the leap year indicator's on the back of the watch. It's a 12-year wheel that jumps once a year to tell you if you're in year 1, 2, 3, or a leap year.
Right.
So
okay. All right, Cameron. Let's divert to you and let's talk about like the technical stuff of perpetual calendars and why the Moser Perpetual is so cool. So we're talking about fragility. I'm a very clumsy person. So I'm probably not the best person to give your perpetual calendar to play with. I'll just look at it. I'll just hold it, marvel at it, and be like, thumbs up, great choice, congratulations. Setting it, not so, I wouldn't do it. I just don't want to take on the risk. So explain to us why going back and forth is such an incredible technical marvel that Moser was able to achieve.
Well, most watches have engagement of solid parts at certain times, and it'll happen staggered so that you're not overwhelming the watch all at once right at midnight. So there'll be a whole bunch of different times that you have to remember. And it could start, depending on the watch, it could start in the late evening and go all the way through to the early morning, where you have to remember, at 4:30 a.m. I can't do anything because these parts are interacting right now, and it's a spring and a star wheel or whatever it is. These parts, if you were to go backwards, you could cause an issue. Some of them, if you go forwards, you could cause an issue.
Yeah.
So not having to think about any of that is really nice. Very many people have come to me with perpetual calendars just to set them with Audemars, Vacheron.
Yeah, I totally would.
And they're even if they know how to set them, they're still scared. They may have been taught once or twice how to set them, but it's still a scary. It could be nerve-wracking to even pull the crown out on one of those watches.
Seriously.
Or pull out your little pusher in order to get the correctors on the case side.
Right.
So all of that adds kind of an unnecessary stress to ownership. So that's one of the reasons I like the Moser so much, is simplicity.
Yeah.
And also the understated dial. I mean, you can like the perpetual calendar function, but not necessarily need all of these extra dials and hands.
Right. Yeah, I've
And
never
there's not-
actually, with the exception
not
of Moser.
another brand doing that.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say that. I've never really seen a perpetual calendar that was as simple as a Moser. I mean, there are perpetual calendars that just have the perpetual calendar indications on them, but for the most part, they're pretty busy when it comes to the dial. Mike, can you show us the dial?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here it goes. So, I mean, that's beautiful. It just has the stick indices and these beautiful hands, and it just looks super, super clean. It's just a very legible watch, which is sometimes kind of difficult to have when you have a perpetual calendar or various complications. And I guess the reason that like perpetual calendars have a lot of other complications on them is just the perpetual calendar complication in itself is so complicated that, hey, why not maybe throw in a couple more and just make it, more expensive and whatnot, or just a bigger technical marvel. Go ahead.
Yeah.
It has a lot to do with, showing everyone that you've created this perpetual calendar by having everything listed on the dial. Just like having lots of lines of text, to let people know that it's an automatic and it's COSC certified and it's made in Switzerland and it's got this water resistance, all of these things.
Yeah.
It's just a way to sell the watch without having to have a trained salesperson or trained watchmaker present it. It's presented right on the dial. So you see a sub-dial that has, your day, your possibly your week, your moon phase, your month. You're going to have all of these things, and the customer can just look at it and go, wow, that's a very complicated watch. It seems to be telling me all of these things.
Right.
Which isn't always going to be the most beautiful way of displaying it.
Right. So I just want to back up for 1 second and explain to maybe some of your listeners don't know. A perpetual calendar is one that knows that April has 30 days and May has 31 and February has 28 days, but every 4 years it will put a 29th day into February. And it does that with no computer and no battery. This is all wheels and cogs and levers that know a 4-year cycle of month lengths. I mean, it's technological genius to be able to even do that. And then to add in the instantaneous jump and the backwards and forwards is really, in our world, it's really an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's absolutely unbelievable. One of my favorite things about perpetual calendars is the fact that they don't let you forget that you own a perpetual calendar. And here's what I mean by that. Yeah, you're constantly going to be either winding it or it's going to be on a watch winder. Because if it stops, you got to set it again. It's not like the watch stops and the calendar function is the only thing that continues to keep going. So, yeah, perpetual calendars, one of my favorite complications. If actually maybe not my most favorite complication. My second would be a moon phase, just because I think it looks cool. But not two terribly useful things, because you could basically, well, at this point, you could look at your phone and not have to worry about winding and possibly destroying your very, very expensive watch. But that's just me. That's just me. All right, let's carry on. Yeah, go ahead,
So,
Mike.
Actually, since you said moon phase,
okay.
I'm going to bring out a Moser moon phase. And actually, Moser calls this a perpetual moon. So I'm sure Cameron can probably explain this well. A typical moon phase watch will have one disc that has 2 moons on it, and it has 59 teeth because the nominal phase of the moon is 29.5 days.
Mm-hmm.
So a typical watch with a 59-tooth disc is going to be off by 1 day in about 2.5 years. The Moser complication is 1 day in 1,027 years.
Okay.
So again, it's a very, very technical. You can set the moon phase to the minute, not to the day, by looking at your calendar going, oh, April 5th is a full moon. So set my watch on April 5th and it's a full moon. So, again, that's just another one of those really very interesting technical things that they do that most other brands don't.
Yeah. Do you guys agree from the standpoint of like watch collecting that stuff like this, the mechanical stuff that is uber complicated, is so much more interesting than the digital stuff? Just because digital stuff is code. Yeah, you have to be a pretty damn good, microchip maker or what is it, the circuit board maker, and obviously you have to know code and your zeros and ones and all that stuff. It's really impressive, but I don't know, just something about the ability to make this mechanical is so much more interesting and so much more impressive.
Well, I mean, that's why we're watch nuts, because, look, you hold up your phone and it's 4:24. It's, it's not anything interesting. It's not anything exciting, but like I said, you hold that little machine up to your ear and you think that there's this engine inside that's the size of a quarter,
right,
and about the thickness of a quarter, and it can keep time to a few seconds a week, a minute a year, whatever. That's amazing. That's amazing to me.
Yeah.
And again, absolutely. If you think about it, you're not going to be handing down your iPhone to your son or daughter or to your grandchildren so that they can look at it and go, wow, this is how my father made it to work on time.
Right.
Or this is how he took his lunch breaks, by seeing his watch and, he was at his job, and it takes you into their life and the history of your family and everything that you loved about them. And there's all these memories, and it's real.
Yeah.
It's an actual piece of metal. It's real mechanical memory that somebody else interacted with and continues to function for hundreds and hundreds of years. Whereas the electronic devices, they will not. They'll be thrown away and forgotten.
Yeah. I have an IWC watch. I love IWC, by the way. I'm not making fun of them. I have an IWC watch from 1973 that uses one of the very early electronic, not quartz, but electronic movements in it. Like, it was licensed from Bulova.
I think I know what you're talking about. Is this the Edison?
The hard part, it's the Edison.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
But originally that watch used a mercury cell battery. I mean, just think about technology since 1973 and the whatever that is, 50 years. We can't buy mercury cell batteries anymore.
Right.
So is that a throwaway? Well, actually, there's a battery that works, but it only works for about 6 months. So every 6 months, I have to change the battery in that watch. So I just never wear it, and I try and remember to pull the crown out when I'm not wearing it. But that's just, who has a 286 computer still?
What is that?
There's no history. There's no longevity to those.
Right.
And to me, okay, great. You can buy a nice quartz watch today. You can buy a gold quartz watch today for a few $1,000s, but 10 years from now, remember when they made the gold Apple Watch when it first came out, and everybody was like, why would you buy that in gold?
Wait, it was actually a solid, like a real gold Apple Watch?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, the very first generation they did it.
Interesting. I'm a big fan of what the Apple Watch has done for watches, or just people who wear watches. I mean, I think the Apple Watch has opened up so many more people to actually wearing a watch and like getting into this hobby. But I have absolutely zero interest when it comes to, I actually kind of find it annoying when people are so super into their Apple Watch, like, oh, wait a minute, I have a phone call coming in. I'm going to press accept on my wrist. I'm like, just pull your phone out. You're going to have to do the same thing anyway. So, but anyway, that's just me complaining. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the other brands that you represent. And I think this is a great time for us to kind of transition into what you do and how you do it for the industry. Because a lot of people, we as enthusiasts and consumers, we kind of know the process of go either online to crownandcaliber.com or to, whichever retailer that you go to, whether they be Great Market or if they're an AD. And that's kind of your in, right? Like, that's how you purchase the watch. You really don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And this is really, I think, an opportunity for us to let people know, like, what actually happens and how watches make their way over to our shores here. So, Mike, can you tell us a little bit about Horology Works and kind of explain what your responsibilities are, and also give us a little bit of kind of insight as to how watches actually end up in the United States and abroad?
Sure. So there's a few different ways that the watch makes it to your wrist. If it's a big brand, let's say Rolex or whatever, any big brand you want to name, They have a company in Switzerland, and then they start a subsidiary in the United States. I don't know what they call it, Rolex USA, let's say.
Okay.
And so Rolex Switzerland sells watches to Rolex USA. Rolex USA imports them, and then they have a whole team of distribution and salespeople who allocate and sell those watches to the local jeweler around the corner from you, so that when you walk in the store and well, you can't do it with a Daytona, but you want to buy a Datejust, there's one on the shelf.
Yeah, even that's hard right now.
So that's one way that the brand has a subsidiary in the United States. Another way is that they'll have a distributor. So there's a guy named Joe Blow who buys a bunch of watches from watch brand ABC. He owns them. He imports them into the United States. And then he distributes them out to the jewelry store around the corner from you.
Right.
And he sells the watch to the jewelry store, or he lends the watch to the jewelry store, however that works. And then they sell it to you. The third way would be if the brand is doing direct sales, because there are some brands that do direct sales. So you'll buy directly from them, and they'll either have it in the US or they'll ship it to you. But the most common way with the smaller brands is to work with somebody like me, which they call an agent. So I don't actually own product. The brand owns the product. So the jeweler will place an order with me. I need these 2 watches.
Okay.
Or these 20 watches, whatever it is. The brand will sell the watches directly to the jeweler. The jeweler pays the brand. But I do everything in between. So I actually import the watches under my company's name. I pay the duty and taxes to get those watches into the United States.
Okay.
And then I distribute them out. These watches go to the jeweler in Los Angeles, and these go to the guy in Texas or whatever. So, but I don't actually own any product. So once the jeweler pays the brand, then the brand sends me commission.
Okay.
So, and then I do everything involved, and I'm basically the face of the brand in the country. So I do importing, distribution. I'll do marketing, help with, if not advertising, all by myself. One of the brands, I have a PR agency that helps with that. I take care of repairs. I kind of do everything that has to be done with the brand. Answer emails. Hey, do you guys have this watch? Do you know who might have one? I'm looking for a very specific model. Who has it in stock?
Okay.
So I kind of do everything. I guess you could say I am Mr. Moser or Mr. Chapek in North America. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. It's a lot of paperwork, a lot of work involved to move that watch from the watchmaker who put it together somewhere in Switzerland to the showcase where you find it in Nashville or wherever.
Yeah, I'm sure. This is probably a silly question, but the watches, how are they usually shipped? They're not shipped by boat, right? I mean, they probably put it on some kind of cargo plane and fly them over.
Believe it or not, most of my brands,
right?
Most of my brands ship FedEx. Yes.
FedEx. Okay. Yeah. Well, that answers my question. But
yeah,
it's a plane.
The one nice thing about watches is they are small.
Yeah, right.
So shipping is not usually an issue unless you're like a Casio or a Rolex or something. Then you're dealing with huge shipments. But for the majority of fine watchmakers, it's going to be relatively small shipments going through customs.
Right.
Yeah, 95% of what I do comes in FedEx.
Okay.
There are a couple private customs brokers that serve as like armored car delivery as well, and sometimes things will come that way if it's a high value watch. But I mean, I got a minute repeater in a couple of weeks ago. That's a solid 6-figure watch, and it came in FedEx.
Okay, all right. So as long as you insure it, apparently everything's good to go, and it's quick.
Exactly.
I mean, FedEx. Then they're pretty on time for the most part. I mean, I can tell you this. I mean, I can't really complain with my Amazon deliveries because the majority of them are done by FedEx here. So I guess we can do a little plug for FedEx and say, hey, good job, guys, in delivering the watches.
The thing that takes the most time is let's see if I can get a picture. My camera froze.
There it goes.
If the watch has a crocodile strap, that's going to take a solid week or two extra.
Wait.
Because you don't know.
No, I don't. So let's talk about this.
So there is something.
That's where the work comes in.
There is something called a CITES. CITES. It stands for the Convention of International Trade on Endangered Species.
You got to be kidding me. Okay.
And a crocodile is an endangered species.
Where?
So everywhere.
Really?
Everywhere.
So
it's farmed typically, the stuff that we use.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So in order for me to import a watch, well, you're in California, so that's a whole nother story. We can talk about that too. But in order for me to import a watch that has a crocodile strap, it has to come with a CITES or CITES, as the French say, a CITES certificate that testifies that the animal was farm raised, ethically killed.
Okay.
And it is not a wild caught alligator that somebody, clubbed to death on the golf course one day in Florida.
Okay.
And so that I have a CITES import license, and the watch goes through United States Fish and Wildlife as well as through Customs, and they have the ability and the right to open the box and inspect the watch and make sure all the paperwork is correct, or they can either refuse the shipment or they can cut the strap off the watch.
You gotta be kidding me.
The watch head and a buckle and no strap.
Wow. Has that ever happened? I mean, I don't know if it's happened to you. You might not want to. I mean, it's up to you to say whether it happened to you. But
unfortunately, it has happened. I had one where the brand made a mistake and they shipped 2 straps and had a CITES for one. And it happened to be one of the packages that they stopped and opened up.
Crazy.
And they destroyed one strap and confiscated it.
So what do you do in that case?
Yeah.
You head over to your local, like, what do they call those? The mall ones, the fix it, something, whatever. And you buy Hadley Roma from them?
Yeah,
I'm
I'm leaning in the other direction because I have envelopes full of watch straps here.
Okay, all right.
So
that
a lot
makes
of
more
times,
sense.
Yeah, a lot of times the brand will ship the watch without a strap, and I keep jeepers. I must have a couple of hundred straps here, and we'll mount the strap onto the watch, and then it takes a couple of days instead of a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So
all right. So there are obviously tips and tricks of the trade to get things expedited.
Yep, but that was another thing I had to learn.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's so much, like, this is why I wanted to talk to you guys about this, because there's so much that goes on in the background with all this stuff. But I mean, Cameron, you don't really have that much of an issue, right? I mean, your stuff is primarily sourced here, and you are a direct seller for the most part.
So you might think that we don't have an issue because it's sourced here.
Mm-hmm.
However, a lot of Swiss brands are actually sourcing their crocodile from the USA.
Yeah, Louisiana, I'm assuming,
so
Florida,
it'll come from
right?
Louisiana, and then it's actually going to Switzerland and then coming back to the U.S.
Okay.
So it's not really where it's from; it's the animal that it's from.
Right.
So for us, we do not make any straps that are from an endangered species. So we're just dealing with our Horween shell cordovan, and then also bovine, so cow, regular old leather. So that can be shipped pretty much anywhere in the world without any kind of issue. So it makes it easier for us not having to deal with any of this.
Yeah.
Right.
And you guys are in California, so I'll bring up the fact that as of January 1st, and it was delayed until April, and now I think May 1st, a California retailer is no longer allowed to sell a watch with a crocodile strap.
What?
Unless it was imported before the deadline. So everything I ship to California now has to be on a kudu or a calf or a rubber strap. We are not allowed to ship crocodile into California anymore.
You've got to be kidding me.
Although the states of Louisiana and Florida are suing California, so that law hasn't quite come into effect yet. But just to be safe, we're not shipping crocodile straps into California anymore.
Yeah, and for anyone who's unaware, these aren't wild animals that they're taking them from. So these are all farmed.
Right. They're not doing anything to deplete the population of these animals is what we're trying to say, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is not just watch straps. I mean, this is ladies' handbags and shoes and belts and briefcases, and I can't imagine what else. But I have a friend who has a custom leather making studio in San Francisco, and she makes, $10,000 alligator purses. And this is destroying her business.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm honestly, I'm not usually at loss for words, but like I have no idea what is going on with this state sometimes.
And not to get into politics, but from what I understand, it started because there was a very brutal video that popped up on YouTube about how supposedly a crocodile was killed in order to make a purse. And I know that all of ours are farm raised, ethically killed, and look,
yeah, and that's why you have the certificate,
right?
That's why that certificate is in place. It's for that particular reason, to make sure it comes from a good farm where everything's done properly.
Yeah. This makes me very concerned. I eat a lot of meat, and I don't know if in the next however many whatevers I'm going to be what if I have to cross state lines to get a good steak? That's a lot of time and effort. I mean, that sounds really, really expensive. But anyway, what were you going to say, Mike?
Yeah. Well, no, I was just going to say, I had a steak, well, not last night, but I had one this week. And, I very well understand that an animal gave its life for me to have a steak.
Sure.
And I'm not interested in participating in that process. I'd much rather go to the grocery store and buy a steak. But, I guess we all understand that, I'm wearing a pair of leather shoes and a leather belt, and that was a cow at one point.
Right.
And, Hakuna Matata, right?
Yeah, whatever that means.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, let's before PETA comes knocking down our virtual doors, let's change topics here, and let's continue talking about a couple of the brands that you work with, and one of them actually really interesting to me is Chopik. So Chopik is a very interesting brand because it's an interesting history. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Chopik, in one way or another, was involved with Patek Philippe, correct?
Yeah, Chopik, Francois Chopik was Patek's first partner.
Right.
Before it was Patek Philippe, it was Patek and Chopik. If you go to the Patek Philippe Museum in Geneva, which, by the way, any watch nut has to go to that museum, even if you don't like Patek, it's an amazing museum. They have some Patek and Chopiks there. So they were partners in the 1840s, 1850s for I think it was 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Chopik was the watchmaker. Patek was a businessman. They were both Poles from Poland, from the country of Poland, and they were fought in the Bohemian War together, which Poland lost. And they made their way to the Czech Republic and then eventually to Switzerland, where they met and became partners. Made a bunch of watches in the 1840s and 50s, and then they went on their own ways. Chopik became just an independent watchmaker. I guess he'd had enough of partnerships. He made watches for Emperor Napoleon III and some amazing pieces.
Right.
And Patek hired Philippe, who was a watchmaker, and the rest is history.
Right.
So when Francois Chopik died, he had no heirs, no children, and the brand basically died with him. And then it was resurrected about not quite 10 years ago by three guys. One's a finance guy, one's a watchmaker, and one's a guy like me who's a marketing guru.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing was they crowdfunded the watch. So they actually put, tender out. They couldn't do it in the United States, but they put a tender out and raised enough capital that they were able to design, implement, and build a watch from scratch. Very interesting in that they're proud to tell you who their partners who their partners are. Most watch brands, if you ask them, they'll tell you, "Oh, no, we do everything here except maybe we don't make the leather strap or something like that."
Right.
But the truth is, they probably don't make the case. They don't make the crystal. They don't make the jewels. They don't make the hairspring. There's a lot in that watch that most brands don't make. I'll say it that way. And Čapek is proud to tell you, these are the guys who make our cases. These are the guys who make our crystals. These are the guys who make our buckles. Our dials are made by either Metallem, who is our Guilloche company. They make watches for Philippe Dufour. Or they're made by Donze Cadran, who make our enamel dials. So we're actually very proud that you can go out. And isn't this what independent watchmaking is all about? You go out and you find the very best guy who does nothing but hairsprings.
Right.
Or you find the very best guy who does nothing but dials. And you use his pieces to make your watch.
Okay. All right. Cameron, have you ever had an experience with a Čapek watch? Because I haven't. They're so Moser's pretty rare, but I've seen a few Mosers, and obviously when you came out and you did splendiferous events for us. I love that word, splendiferous. But Čapek is one of those brands that I've only heard amazing things about. I've only seen videos of and pictures of, and I'm like salivating to see one in person because, first of all, the hands, prime, very, very nice design on the hands, and then the dials are so deep, so beautifully deep, even though most of the dials are single colored. Anyway, Cameron, any experience with Čapek?
I have no experience with them. I've never seen one in person. That's why I was really excited to talk about them today.
Yeah, so
because I've only seen pictures.
Right.
I mean, to give you a little scope, Moser makes about 1,500 watches a year, and last year, 2019, Čapek made less than 150 watches.
Wow. Okay.
So
well, that explains
it's kind of no surprise that, unless you had come to Watch Time Los Angeles last fall, it would be hard for you to find one. That's for sure.
Yeah. Right. You typically are only going to hold one in your hand if you've ordered one, or you happen to know Mike.
Right. And so, I mean, that's a lot of the fun because the brand is so small. Kind of, there are off-the-shelf watches, but so much of what we do is custom, where they'll say, "Well, I want this watch, but can you put hands with loom on it instead of hands with no loom?" And we're like, "Sure, we're going to build it up for you anyway. So we'll do whatever you want." So, so that's interesting. The movements are made by either Vaucher, which is in the Parmigiani group.
Okay.
They make our chronograph movement, or they're made by a company called Chronode, which is Jean-Francois Mojon. He's in Leloc. He won he made an Opus watch for Harry Winston, the Opus, I think, 10. So he's a movement manufacturer. That's all he does is make movements. We went to him with a picture of a Čapek from 1845 and said, "Can you make us a movement that looks like this?"
Very cool. So he kind of reverse engineered it?
Yeah, it is a proprietary movement. He doesn't make it for anybody but Čapek.
Cool.
But it's made by one of the best movement manufacturers in Switzerland.
Very cool. Very cool. Cameron, do you have any questions about it?
Do you have any there that that you could hold up to the camera?
I do. I have one here.
It's kind of hard to see. Is that a dual
Chronograph,
register?
right?
Yeah. Okay.
It's actually a triple. Sorry, this is terrible. It's actually a triple register chronograph with a deep Guilloche dial made of. The dial is actually not colored. It's the silver color that the Guilloche blanks are before somebody paints them brown or green or black or whatever color most Guilloche dials are. So that's very interesting. And it's an interesting Guilloche pattern called Guilloche ricochet. Most Guilloche starts in the middle of the watch and emanates out from there.
Right.
This would be like you took two stones and threw them in the pond at once. and then you have the intersecting ripples of the guilloche. So
Right.
really cool pattern.
Kind of that waviness, right?
Exactly.
Very cool. This is what watchmaking is all about for me. When you take a look at something that's that beautiful, and I didn't really see that it was a 3-register chrono, and I just saw 2, but even in the kind of murkiness that we have here with the internet connection, it's already just a kick-ass watch. But anyway, go ahead.
Beautiful. No, it's a beautiful watch. One I really like a lot, and I love the guys I work with there. The CEO is just one of the nicest guys. He's turned into one of my best friends over the last few years.
Awesome.
We had an introduction by a friend of mine in Chicago who had bought one, and he and I had a Skype call, and in 15 minutes we shook hands over Skype and agreed that we would work together. It was really nice.
That seems to be the reality of life nowadays with coronavirus. So it's like you guys set a precedent there.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of funny. As an independent, I have to like the product. As a watch guy, there's a lot of stuff out there that I'm like, you know what, that's nice, but that's not what I want to do.
Right.
And I also have to like the people that I work with. I walked away from a company in Basel a year ago. Just got a bad vibe, and I was like, you know what? Thank you, but I'm not going to do this. And we had gotten really far. We were at the point that we were about to sign contracts, and one little thing went weird on me, and I was done. I walked away.
Crazy. Okay. Well,
so
that shows the quality that you work with.
I gotta like the product. I gotta like the product. I gotta like the people. I'm just not going to work with somebody I don't like.
Fair.
That's all.
Fair.
My newest brand is a brand called Singer.
Okay.
Singer's a brand that I just picked up a couple of months ago. Very much an automotive themed watch. Started out from the Singer guys in California who do the restoration of the air-cooled Porsches.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Marco Borrachino who was an executive at Panerai for many years, and he came up with the idea of doing a Singer watch. So the watch is very sporty, very car-oriented, uses an amazing movement, and tells time a little differently from most watches, which I think is really fun. And yeah, really nice watch. I just started with them March 1st, and we've sold 2 pieces already, which
very nice.
Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot,
Yeah,
it's a lot. So
yeah, that chronograph movement, like you were saying, it's very different, designed to be completely different, very special. It's all centrally located, correct?
Oh, that looks complicated.
Yes.
The hands.
So everything comes off the center pinion. Actually, the Moser Streamliner uses a movement from the same company. The company is called Agenor. So on the Moser, hours, minutes, chronos, seconds, chrono minutes all come off of the center pinion. On the Singer, you have chrono minutes, chrono seconds, chrono hours off of the center, and then the timekeeping is on a peripheral 2 discs way out at the edge. But it's an amazing movement. It's an automatic, but the rotor is in between the movement and the dial. So when you look at the movement, you don't see rotor, you just see movement.
Wait a minute. Say that again. Explain that.
Yeah.
It's in between the movement and the dial. So is it kind of like a Bucherer type of?
Right. So, no, the Bucherer uses a peripheral rotor that's only on the very edge.
Right.
This is, again, sorry for the terrible picture, but
no worries.
This is an automatic movement. And the rotor, instead of being on the back, is in between the movement and the dial.
Okay.
So you don't see it.
Sandwich rotor.
So you don't see it. Yeah. So it's a full rotor that takes up the whole diameter of the movement. You just don't see it. Which, how come nobody thought of that, 500 years ago?
Seriously.
But whatever.
Right?
Hey, Mike, can you do me a favor? Can you put the watch up?
Beautiful.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, can you put the watch up and do a side profile? Because I'm thinking, by the way that you described it, it's not that thick. I was
No,
thinking
it's
like
not.
because of the way that the
It's
movement
not.
is and everything is centrally located, you would have to have this bubble almost kind of like, some of the MB&F stuff where you have the balance.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's I got a micrometer, but it's probably maybe 14 or 15 thick at the most.
Okay, so it's not that bad.
It's not a tuna fish can, that's for sure.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay.
The movement maker is one of the greatest movement makers and designers that exists over in Switzerland right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was quite the undertaking to do this, and they designed it really nicely.
Right.
Yeah, really cool watch. I like it a lot.
Cool. Cameron, do you have any questions about the watch or like about the movement, or should we continue on?
Well, let's continue.
Okay, cool.
What else do we have?
Mike? Let's do this.
Odds.
Let's see. I brought a
that
couple
looks
of
very
Moser
spectacular.
tourbillons. There's one, and again, sorry for my terrible webcam. There's another one. This one, you notice, has it's what Moser calls a concept dial.
Mhm.
So there's no hours, minutes, no track, no numbers, no markers. It's just all dial and tourbillon, which is kind of one of the things that Moser's known for.
Right.
These super clean, beautiful dials. So, yeah. And then I brought one last piece that maybe we want to talk about, which if I hold it back here, you'd probably think that it's a watch made by a certain tech company in Cupertino, California.
Yes.
But when I turn it over,
so it's funny that you're
There you
showing
go.
this watch.
It's
This would be the
the real deal.
second appearance that this watch has made on the Watch and Listen podcast. So here's the cool thing about Mike. Mike is one of the easiest going people that I've ever met, not just in the watch world, but ever. So when I was invited to come onto the show and be a guest, I wanted to talk about independent watches. And I was like, wait a minute, where am I going to find independent watches? I don't own any. Wait a minute. I have a friend named Mike Margolis. So I sent Mike a text. We got on the phone. I was like, Mike, I need some watches. And Mike promptly sends me a UPS package, or wait, was it FedEx?
Sure.
It might have been FedEx.
probably
FedEx package, okay? Give credit where it's due, right? So he sends me this package. I open up this watch, and boom, there it is. It's that beautiful Moser, and it is, let's talk about what that watch actually kind of did. So it did piss a few people off, and it kind of created a little bit of a stink just because of what it looks like, but I think it was a beautiful kind of, hey, we're in this to make, we're not just going to do the whole like status quo thing and manufacture beautiful watches. We're actually going to do something kind of interesting and possibly even controversial to, I guess, bring some attention upon the brand.
Yeah, it came from questions that we started getting. Again, you have to go back a few years. There was the Tag Heuer connected watch. IWC had one. There was that little disc that you stuck between your watch and your wrist, and it would flash and beep when you got a text message. And so there've been Hublot has a connected watch. So there've been a bunch of Swiss watch brands that started doing connected watches.
Mm-hmm.
And Edward Malon, the CEO of Moser, started getting questions. Well, when are you guys going to do a connected watch, right? And so he's a smart guy. He has an MBA from Wharton. And the truth is, when they bought the company, he had purchased, I think there was 600 rectangular movements in the drawers of the company, and they weren't making the rectangular. Actually, it was kind of an octagonal watch called the Henry. They weren't making that watch anymore because it didn't sell super well. And the accountants wanted him to write the watch off. Excuse me, to write the movements off. And he was like, I think we can do something with this. And then when people started asking him, hey, are you guys going to do a connected watch? He thought, okay, hold on a minute. Let's have some fun here. And so they designed a watch that is nearly identical dimensions of the Apple Watch. It's a rectangular watch with wire lugs, and on the back is a full Moser mechanical movement that runs 4 days and has a power reserve indicator on the back. And it came out with kind of a funny movie about how the watch only had one app right? And the app was the time, and that it was really easy to recharge just by doing this. And, it was kind of just, like Moser loves to do, sort of poke and provoke. But at the same time, a serious message in the back saying, look, we are a Swiss watchmaking company founded in 1828. And for almost 200 years, we've been making watches that are mechanical, that you can pass down to your grandchildren and their grandchildren. And we're not going to make a watch with a battery, and we're not going to make a watch that flashes at you when you get a text message.
Sure.
That's just not who we are and not what we do.
Yeah, if you guys haven't seen the video, try to go on YouTube. I hope it's still on YouTube. It's actually a really funny advertisement. It's kind of reminiscent of those ads that, like they did one for the mattresses, or like, oh, I remember Squatty Potty. You guys remember the Squatty Potty? It's kind of reminiscent of, like, it's in the vein of those types of ads. It's really funny. You guys should take a look, because it's kind of like this montage thing where they're walking and it's really silly. But look, let's talk about this really briefly. What they did was very, very ballsy, but what they did was absolutely 100% true. Like, think about where connected watches are right now. Have you heard of anything that has to do with connected watches within the last year or two? Because I haven't.
I've honestly never had one on my wrist. I think I understand what they are. I think they're great for our industry. I think they convince, you said it a little earlier, Mike, they're convincing a new generation of, let's say, 20, 30-year-olds that when it's time to when you need to know what time it is, you should go like this and look at your wrist,
right,
versus pulling your phone out of your pocket. So that, for a long time, was not the muscle memory of young people, that you would look at your wrist to know what time it was. So that's changed. There's certainly a lot of functionality involved in, my youngest son wears one. He swears by it, and he can track his sleep. Was he in REM sleep, and how many hours did he get? And all that's terrific. I think I can see why even a watch enthusiast might wear one on their off wrist and a real watch on their proper wrist. To me, it's more of a remote display than it is a watch.
Yeah,
I agree. I think it's been really good for our industry. I don't have anything against them, even if I don't own one and don't really have interest in one. One of my friends at one of my brands has a smartwatch that he wears when he works out.
Sure,
and he can track his miles when he's running, and his heartbeat when he's on his bike and whatever. And I think they have a place in our world. I just don't.
Do. They absolutely do.
I think today, this is how I tell people. I'm a man. I have two pieces of jewelry, right? I have a wristwatch and I have a wedding band. And those are the only two pieces of jewelry that I have. I don't wear a necklace. I don't wear a bracelet. I don't have earrings. I have two pieces of jewelry, and that's it. And so I want those two pieces of jewelry to tell somebody something about me if they choose to look and notice.
Right.
And so I don't want to wear a $25 black plastic watch from Walmart. I just don't. I think the whole Casio G-Shock thing is really cool, but I just can't bring myself to buy one and wear it.
Fair.
I've come this close so many times to calling up my friend at Topper and saying, hey, send me one of those cool G-Shocks. But I can't do it. I just can't do it.
Well, maybe if you watch an episode that we just recorded recently about Doomsday Watches, we'll be able to change your mind a little bit, because, the times are changing and you might need a arrangement, right? Is that what it is, Cameron? Arrangement? Pathman? What was the name of it? I forgot already.
Well, which one? I mean, you got the Pathfinder from Casio.
There we go, Pathfinder.
You got the, the Mudmaster.
Mudmaster. That's my favorite. That's my favorite one, just by the name, Mudmaster.
Yeah.
Mudmaster. Casio makes a G-Shock with a full metal stainless steel bracelet. It's like $500-600, and it's really nice looking. I just can't.
Well, don't they have like a titanium one that's like several $1,000s?
Yeah, they have another series called the MRGs. I'm sure it stands for something, but I have no idea what. And they're 4-figure, maybe 5-figure watches.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, look, if there's a buyer,
Well,
make the watch.
You know what? My job in this world is to convince people that they need a nice watch, and whether that's $100 or $100,000, that's their business. I just don't want them to wear a $25 black plastic watch.
Right. Well, I think we're all in agreement here. I think that's all of our jobs at this point. And I mean, both podcasters and, obviously promoters of crownandcaliber.com, but also people that enjoy this hobby as much as we do. I mean, it's like when you're talking to someone about a watch, and a really nice watch, you get this excitement, and you're trying to tell them why you really, really like it and why they possibly should like it as well. Hopefully you're not too forceful and you're turning people off, but that's kind of what it is. But anyway, we're running pretty long on time, gentlemen. This is an awesome conversation. I hate to stop it. We do have to end eventually, but before we do, Cameron, do you have any questions for Mike?
No, it was great to hear a little background on Moser and Chopik. I think those are two brands. As soon as we're out of quarantine, I'd love to get down to our local Los Angeles store and take a look.
Yes, you and I both.
So hopefully soon.
You and I both.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, gentlemen. Well, here's what we're going to do.
Back out there.
Likewise, we can't wait for you to come back out here. Gentlemen, thank you so much again for the stellar conversation. I hate to end this, but we kind of have to because, we all have things to do. So here's what we'll do. As we did in the previous episode, again, if you haven't watched the Basel World episode between the three of us, please do. It was a really, really great one. Mike had some pretty amazing points, so did Cameron. So go back to that. Take a look, and also the rest of the episodes as well that are on the YouTube channel and everywhere else you can find the show. So, Mike, please let people know where they can find you, and we'll shoot over to Cameron, and I'll wrap it up.
Sure, you can find me on Instagram as The Watch Enabler. You can find my website, which is horologyworks.com, and from one of those two places, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
Cheers. All right, sounds good. Cameron, your turn.
Yeah, find me over on Instagram, Weiss Watch Company, and also you can go online and visit our store from the safety of your home.
Awesome.
WeissWatchCompany.com. You can go there and support American watchmaking.
All right, so still taking orders, still shipping out watches. Come on, people, support your local small business.
Oh, yeah.
All right, cool.
Absolutely. Just one watchmaker over here in his workshop.
That's right, that's right. Okay, and finally with me...
And you're open.
Yes. Well, he's literally at the shop right now, so I would think so.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So me, very simple, at Road Stories Mike. Check out my previous podcast, the Road Stories Podcast, and On Time as well. If you have any questions, concerns, shoot us a DM to either one of our Instagrams, and stay tuned for future episodes. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to visit crownandcaliber.com. They're still open. They're still operating. They're still sending out watches. In fact, what day is it today? Is today Monday?
It is.
Today is Monday. Okay, so today...
You would know that if you had your Perpetual Calendar.
I would. But again, I'm too much of a scaredy cat to have one. But anyway, so today, actually, a watch was shipped out to my cousin. So my cousin had just placed an order on crownandcaliber.com for a Rolex watch. Make sure to go out and buy your own Rolex watch or whatever watch you're looking at, on the Crown and Caliber website. Trust me, they do not have a deficit. They've got plenty of watches to choose from. And with that being said... Thanks, guys. We're going to sign off.